The email came in at exactly 2:30 a.m., just as the cabin lights dimmed and the Dubai skyline vanished beneath the clouds. Subject line, termination notice. Effective immediately. For a few seconds, I stared at the screen. Termination notice. Effective immediately. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But it was all there in perfect clarity. My name, my role, and the sentence that cut clean through everything. Your employment with NextCore Technologies has been terminated. Effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Please do not return to any company property. No call, no meeting, no thank you. Just this sterile final notice. And the sender, Harrison Ford, the CEO himself. The very man who shook my hand 2 weeks ago and said, "You're the only one I trust to pull this off." My name is Adrian Blake. I'm 34 years old. And for the past 9 years, I've been the guy companies call when billion-dollar deals are falling apart. I don't have an MBA from Harvard. I don't have a corner office or a company car. What I have is a track record of making impossible things happen, usually while someone else gets the credit. Until today, I thought that was enough. I looked around the cabin. Everyone else was asleep, curled into their business class pods with eye masks and wine-stained pillows. I was alone with the hum of the jet engines and a silence that suddenly felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. 10 days, 3 continents, Dubai for initial alignment, Berlin for compliance, Mexico City for the close. I hadn't just participated in this deal. I'd built it. 3 global giants, 1 synchronized move to NextCore's cloud system. 2, $3 billion across 7 years. And now I didn't even work there anymore. I stared at the laptop in front of me for another full minute. Then, without saying a word, I reached under the seat and pulled out a second laptop. Matte black, unbranded, and encrypted. The one no one at NextCore knew existed. I opened it, logged in, watched the screen blink awake, and I smiled. They thought this was the end of my journey. They had no idea I'd already started another one. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing in that same glass-paneled boardroom on the 28th floor, watching grown men scramble to save a collapsing $650 million contract. The client, a notoriously difficult European energy consortium, had walked out mid-negotiation. Legal was in panic, finance was pointing fingers, and the VP of Global Sales had nearly burst into tears. I didn't wait to be asked. I just walked in, grabbed the abandoned proposal from the table, rewrote the core structure in 20 minutes, and requested a private call with the consortium's head delegate. By the next morning, the contract was not only salvaged, it was expanded to include 2 new territories. That wasn't my first miracle for NextCore. It was just the most recent one. After the win, there was a champagne toast in the executive lounge. People clapped. Harrison gave one of his hollow grins and said, "Now that's the kind of leadership we need at the next level." Someone even slipped a promotion rumor into the hallway chatter. Executive Vice President, Global Strategy. The title sounded ridiculous, overblown, and overdue, because I wasn't just a closer. I was the firewall. The one they called when the men in suits couldn't land the plane. I'd negotiated with energy giants, telecom empires, and foreign ministries. I spoke 4 languages, kept 2 phones, and lived out of airports for 7 years. I made NextCore look far more stable than it really was. And still, the title never came. A week after the champagne, I was told the promotion was in progress, then under review, then silence. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe they were restructuring. Maybe HR was slow. Maybe for once it wasn't personal. Then I overheard it. It was during a board lunch. I was in the adjoining conference room preparing a portfolio. The sliding door had been left slightly open. Someone even slipped a promotion rumor into the hallway chatter. Executive Vice President, Global Strategy. I mean, come on. One board member chuckled. Adrian's brilliant, but let's be honest. He walks into a room and no other guy wants to speak. He dominates every pitch. Another replied, "Yeah, he's not exactly EVP material. He's more field ops." Field ops, like I was some glorified negotiator they could fly around and then forget about. That moment stuck with me longer than the missed promotion because the truth was clear. They didn't want to promote me. They wanted to contain me. Too confident, too polished, too many wins that couldn't be redirected to someone else. I was the one they called when the deals needed saving, but never the one they wanted at the table when credit was handed out. I stood there in that empty conference room holding the portfolio I'd spent weeks building and realized something. It wasn't about merit. It was about control. The quiet ones got elevated. The loud ones, especially the ones like me, got sidelined. And yet, I didn't storm out. I didn't raise hell. I returned to my desk, booked 3 back-to-back international flights, and got to work on the biggest deal of the company's history. Because if they wouldn't give me the title, I'd build one of my own. It's funny how betrayal rarely arrives with a loud crash. Sometimes it drips in like a slow leak, unnoticed at first, until you're standing in a room ankle-deep in water, wondering when it started. A year ago, Maxwell Ford was in trouble. Fresh MBA from Wharton, barely 2 years of corporate experience, and one very large mistake: an unauthorized data transfer during a client demo in Frankfurt that accidentally exposed personal information from a pilot partner in Singapore. It should have been a public scandal. The legal team panicked. The marketing department froze. And Harrison, he called me. "Clean it up quietly," he said over the phone. He didn't mean to. He just didn't know the protocols. I didn't argue. I pulled every connection I had, worked around the clock to contain the leak, and spun the story into a beta testing glitch that never made it past trade blogs. I even took the media call myself so his name wouldn't appear in any press notes. No one thanked me. I didn't ask for it. I told myself it was loyalty, that protecting the company meant protecting everyone in it, even the CEO's son. But loyalty starts to rot when it isn't mutual. 3 days before my trip across continents, I opened a shared drive to finalize our pitch materials for the Nexus deal. These were the slides I'd been refining for weeks. Charts, analytics, proposal structure, all laid out with precision. There they were, perfect, exactly how I'd left them. Except for one detail. The document properties listed the author as Maxwell Ford. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe he had downloaded them and accidentally saved over. But as I clicked through the deck, I realized he had made subtle edits, rephrasing bullet points, adjusting the layout slightly, but keeping my entire structure intact. The bones were mine. The pitch was mine. The name on it wasn't. He hadn't even bothered to notify me. That night, I sat in my apartment with the city lights glowing just beyond the window. I stared at the slide deck until the lines blurred. And then I did something I wasn't proud of. I closed it. I didn't confront him. I didn't message Harrison. I didn't tell a soul. Because deep down, I already knew what would happen. They'd dismiss it as collaboration. They'd say I was imagining things. Worse, they'd think I was being territorial. So I said nothing. I packed my bags. I finalized my flight routes. And I told myself it didn't matter. But it did, because the hurt wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It seeped in slowly every time someone praised his strategic clarity. Every time I sat in a meeting and watched him recite my words like they were his. I had protected him, covered for him, saved his reputation, and now he was erasing mine. I've never been one to panic. Not when deals collapse. Not when executives melt down in boardrooms. And certainly not when my own future begins to shift beneath my feet. So when I realized the promotion wasn't coming, when I saw Maxwell's name on my slides and felt the weight of erasure pressing in, I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I pivoted quietly, strategically. The truth was, I had already started building the parachute 6 months earlier. Not because I expected betrayal, but because experience had taught me something simple. Power respects leverage, not loyalty. NextCore didn't always look the way it did now. When I joined, it was scrappy. Still climbing toward mid-tier status, full of sharp minds and real ambition. Over time, as investors poured in and politics took root, the soul of the company shifted. Harrison stopped hiring the best candidates and started promoting the safest. The innovation team was gutted, compliance was weaponized, and anyone with independent ideas was gradually frozen out. Many of those people were my friends. Some were mentors. All of them, like me, had quietly kept building, just no longer for NextCore. I called the project Apex Solutions. No flashy pitch deck, no seed round fanfare, just a name, a legal structure, and a growing team of former engineers, product strategists, and compliance specialists who understood the pain of being left behind by the very machine they helped create. Every part of Apex was designed to correct the exact things NextCore had broken: agility instead of bureaucracy, transparency instead of control, and above all, client-centered thinking. We didn't announce it. We didn't need to. It wasn't a revenge company. It was a future waiting to be activated. Still, I kept it quiet. I was still under contract, still earning their trust, and I had no intention of burning a bridge unless someone else lit the match first. That moment came sooner than I expected. It was during a long dinner in Mexico City, seated across from Rodriguez Martinez, the CEO of Brasilink, one of the 3 legacy firms in the Nexus deal. We'd just completed our 3rd round of proposal fine-tuning, and he was nursing a glass of whiskey, his tie loosened, the pressure of billion-dollar decisions momentarily off his shoulders. He looked at me, serious, quiet, and asked a question I wasn't prepared for. What would it take for you to lead instead of follow? I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. He continued, "You don't speak like an employee. You speak like someone who built something from the ground up. So why aren't you running the company?" I laughed gently. "Because someone else inherited it." He smiled but didn't laugh. "But if you ever decide to change that, call me." Some of us prefer to back leaders, not logos. That moment stuck with me. Not because it was flattering, though it was, but because it mirrored everything I'd been trying to ignore. Clients could sense it. They felt the gap between the person doing the work and the people taking the credit. They saw the same things I did: the political appointments, the weakened innovation, the strange silences after strong results. And they were watching me, waiting. When I returned to New York, I didn't tell anyone what Rodriguez had said. I didn't tell them about the side calls I'd begun receiving from Technova's procurement director, or the subtle inquiries from Eurolink's legal team about alternative partnership models. But I did expand Apex's charter. I scheduled quiet meetings with my core group: former legal lead Jenna Park, systems architect Raheem Silva, and ex-finance strategist Noah Tan. We didn't use company emails. We didn't meet in offices. We met in apartments, over dinner, on encrypted channels. Every piece was falling into place. NextCore thought I was their closer, but I had already started something they couldn't see. A company that didn't need to close deals with power, but with purpose. If anyone had walked into the executive ballroom without context, they would have thought it was a coronation. Gold linens, crystal chandeliers, a live quartet playing softly in the corner. The company had spared no expense for the Strategic Growth Gala, which in reality was a celebration of Maxwell Ford's sudden promotion to Vice President of International Strategy. The irony was hard to swallow. I had built that department, literally from scratch. Back when it was just me working from 3 time zones out of a suitcase, trying to convince European partners that NextCore wasn't just another over-promising tech firm. Back when the idea of international strategy was considered too ambitious for a mid-tier company barely holding its domestic ground. I had carved that path with grit, late-night flights, and fluency in 6 different acronyms. And now I was standing under a chandelier, smiling through my teeth, holding a champagne glass I hadn't sipped from, pretending to toast the man who had taken my title, my team, and my narrative. Maxwell was radiant, of course. Dark suit, perfectly styled hair, speaking points rehearsed to perfection. He clinked glasses with board members and dropped buzzwords like multilateral integration and cross-tier scalability while the PR team captured it all. "Thank you all," he said, lifting his glass. "It's an honor to take on this role and continue the strategic vision our company has pioneered." I stood behind him, half in the spotlight, half in the shadow. No mention of my name. Not a single reference to the deals I had just closed in Dubai or the negotiation frameworks I had drafted. Jenna Park, my former legal partner, and now secretly one of Apex's founding team, brushed past and whispered behind her glass, "This is surreal." Surreal was generous. People I had worked alongside for years now avoided eye contact. A few of the more decent ones offered awkward half-smiles, the kind that said, "I know this is wrong, but I also want to keep my job." Harrison took the mic toward the end, still tall, still smug in his perfectly tailored suit. He had the kind of voice that could sell sincerity to a room full of cynics. "We've watched Maxwell grow into this role," he began, "and I can think of no one better to lead our most important initiative yet, our global expansion through the Nexus partnership." I froze. The room clapped. Then he turned slightly and added, "And he'll be shadowing Adrian on the upcoming trip as part of that transition." Shadowing me, as if I was a mentor. As if I had agreed to train the man who'd taken the title meant for me in a department I'd built on a deal I was about to close after 10 months of grinding across time zones. I felt my stomach tighten. I wanted to laugh or scream or throw my champagne into the ice sculpture shaped like a globe. Instead, I nodded. I even managed to smile, trained and sharp. People clapped again, and I pretended the sound wasn't nails against glass inside my skull. But inside, calculation burned quiet and cold beneath my skin. Not because they replaced me, but because they expected me to help him do it gracefully, quietly, like a good soldier who knew when to disappear. I took a slow breath and sipped the champagne for the first time. It was flat. Maxwell turned and leaned in, all warmth and performance. "I hope we'll have time to talk through the Mexico City structure before the meetings. I'm still trying to catch up on some of the European details." "You should," I said calmly. "They tend to ask tough questions." "Oh," he chuckled. "Well, I'll just point them to you. You always know what to say." I smiled, the kind of smile that comes right before the drawbridge lifts, because I already knew he wouldn't be going. They didn't know it yet, but I'd already booked a second itinerary. One that didn't include him or Harrison or anyone from the company that had just buried my name under a job title with a fresh coat of paint. By the time I landed in Dubai, I hadn't slept properly in 4 days. The gala, the fake congratulations, Maxwell's smug request to walk through the Mexico City structure, Harrison's backhanded announcement, all of it had worn me thin. But none of that mattered now, because what waited on the other side of each customs gate was something far bigger than my bruised ego. The Nexus deal. 3 legacy telecom firms, Teknova in Dubai, Eurolink in Berlin, and Brazilink in Mexico City, joining forces in a historic cloud migration. It had taken me 10 months of whispered introductions, cultural navigation, and trust building to get them to the table. Now I had 10 days to close it. 3 cities, 3 continents, no margin for error. In Dubai, the tension hit immediately. Teknova's CTO, Khalil Rashid, was sharp, skeptical, and direct. You promise security. So do your competitors. Why should we believe you offer more than words? He asked this before the tea even hit the table. I pulled up the encryption spec sheet I'd designed with NextCore's internal engineers, a document the board hadn't even reviewed yet. I walked him through the exact protocols we'd customized for multi-jurisdictional compliance, real-time redundancy, zero-trust architecture. When I finished, he didn't smile. He simply nodded. I see why they send you, he said. The others, they speak, but they do not understand. After the meeting, we shared a brief walk to his car. I paused, then asked softly, and if there were a leaner model, same tech stack, but fewer layers between need and delivery? Khalil turned his head. You mean less NextCore? Something like that. He didn't respond, but when he got into the car, he looked back and said, send the materials again, privately. Then, just before closing the door, some of us prefer to back leaders, not logos. In Berlin, Eurolink's legal team was warier. The GDPR regulatory shifts had made compliance a nightmare, and NextCore's standard contract language was riddled with ambiguities. I'd flagged it before. They hadn't fixed it, so I fixed it myself. At 11:40 that night, sitting in a tiny flat I'd rented for 2 nights, I rewrote the terms using my own templates, ones we'd developed quietly through Apex's counsel, Jenna Park. The next morning, I handed the updated drafts across the polished table at Eurolink's headquarters. The GC, a no-nonsense woman named Linda Schmidt, raised an eyebrow. This isn't NextCore standard, she said. It's the one that works, I replied, unless you prefer 3-week delays and 50 red lines. She skimmed the top page. You did this? Yes. Off the record. Linda smiled. Well, maybe next time we negotiate, you'll be sitting on this side of the table. She paused, studying me carefully. You know, Adrian, you don't speak like an employee. You speak like someone who built something from the ground up. Makes me wonder why you're not running the company instead of just representing it. I felt something flicker inside me. She wasn't just impressed. She was suggesting something, wondering out loud why I wasn't already the one leading the company I claimed to represent. And she wasn't the only one. By the time I landed in Mexico City, I was running on caffeine and willpower. The Brazil meeting was the final leg. Financial structure, revenue share model, data sovereignty, all the red flags in one room. And worse, Maxwell was supposed to be there. Supposed to shadow me. He didn't come. I knew he wouldn't. I had changed the itinerary last minute, rerouting myself through Argentina, ensuring no internal team could track my movements in real time. NextCore thought I was flying in a day later. I was already on the ground, already working. The meeting with CEO Rodriguez Martinez lasted 4 hours. He grilled me on risk thresholds, capital exposure, and long-term support models. When I held firm on the numbers the board had fought me on, he finally leaned back and exhaled. I trust you, Adrian, he said, tapping the table. But I don't trust NextCore. You know that, right? I do, so if this falls apart later, it won't. He looked at me carefully. Unless you leave. That's when I leaned in. And if there were a way, I said, keeping my voice low, for you to get this deal without that risk, without the politics, the noise, the bottlenecks, would you be open? Rodriguez didn't blink. You know the answer to that. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Adrian, I've been in this business for 20 years. I've seen a lot of smart people get crushed by companies that don't deserve them. You're too good to be anyone's second choice. 3 cities, 3 meetings, 3 quiet seeds planted. And in each one, the same pattern. Skepticism toward NextCore. Trust toward me. Not the logo, me. I carried the weight of the company across hemispheres, across time zones, across fatigue. I answered questions before they were asked, rewrote contracts on my own time, and stood between billion-dollar doubts and billion-dollar commitments. But I wasn't just closing a deal. I was opening a door. The cabin lights dimmed just as we crossed the equator. I had been staring out the window, the vast darkness below stretching endlessly. When I opened my laptop to review the Mexico City meeting notes one more time, the contract summary was pristine. The numbers matched. The client was in. The deal was done. It should have been the proudest moment of my career. Instead, the screen glitched. The internal server booted me out. I tried again. Access denied. I clicked into Slack. Session expired. My company calendar disappeared. My Outlook went blank. Then an email. Subject, termination notification. Effective immediately. Sender, Harrison Ford. I read the first line and my chest tightened like a vice. Adrian, effective immediately. Your employment with NextCore Technologies is terminated. All credentials and accesses have been revoked in accordance with HR protocol. Please refrain from engaging with any company clients or partners moving forward. No salutation, no gratitude, no explanation. Just a knife slid quietly between the ribs, 35,000 feet in the air. For a moment, I sat completely still. The flight attendants moved quietly down the aisle, collecting half-empty wine glasses from the late-night service. Around me, the other business travelers slept beneath beige blankets, blissfully unaware. My laptop screen blinked again, this time going black. They'd locked me out of everything. I reached for my phone. Same result, VPN blocked. Credentials invalid. Even my internal contacts list was gone. They had erased me. No warning, no meeting, no chance to defend my role. This wasn't a restructuring. This was an execution. And the insult cut deeper than the decision itself. They didn't even wait until I landed. They didn't have the decency to look me in the eye. They fired me in silence while I was midair, alone, after closing the biggest deal in company history. I should have felt rage, and maybe, in some distant corner of my gut, I did. But mostly I felt insulted, not because they let me go, but because they thought I was disposable, replaceable, powerless. They fired me like someone who hadn't just carried their entire international growth strategy on his back. They thought cutting access would cut control. They thought revoking my email would revoke my influence. They thought I had no backup. They were wrong. 6 weeks earlier, long before Harrison's quiet power plays, before Maxwell's fake promotion, I'd followed protocol and initiated a private backup of my Nexus deal notes. The legal team had approved it as a precaution, standard for high-risk deals conducted across borders and languages. I had it all. The pitch decks, contract versions, financial modeling, call transcripts, even handwritten client feedback. They said I had no right to engage with clients. They forgot I was the only reason those clients were still engaged at all. I reached under the seat, pulled out the matte black laptop I never synced to NextCore systems, and placed it on the tray table. It hummed quietly to life. Encrypted, offline, untouchable. The wallpaper glowed in the dark cabin light. A simple logo, half-finished. Apex Solutions. I opened the encrypted folder. Everything was there. Each market strategy, every clause in every version of every contract. Secure, legally sound mine. The fury finally flickered. But not as fire, as resolve. Harrison hadn't just fired me. He'd freed me. They thought cutting me loose midair would break me, but all it did was cut the rope holding me back. I opened a clean document, placed my hands on the keyboard, and typed 3 simple words. Let's begin. Then I closed the lid and leaned back. Outside the window, the sky was still pitch black. But for the first time in months, I saw a clear horizon. The city looked the same. From the back seat of the taxi, I watched the skyline crawl past. Steel and glass towers soaking in late morning sun. Yellow cabs weaving in and out. Pedestrians rushing with coffees and phones like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had shifted. It was 8:40 a.m. when we pulled up to the NextCore headquarters. I paused before getting out, staring at the building I'd entered almost every day for the last 9 years. It looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing it differently now. Less as home, more as a place that never truly belonged to me. As I stepped into the marble-floored lobby, the security guard, Daniel, who used to wave me in with a grin, froze. "Mr. Blake," he said, shifting awkwardly. I wasn't told you'd be coming in today." "I wasn't told I wouldn't be," I said calmly, holding up my badge. I pressed it against the gate. Nothing. Red light. "Access denied." Daniel winced. "I'm really sorry. It's just HR flagged the system this morning." I nodded. I didn't argue. It wasn't his fault. He looked more uncomfortable than I did. But as I stood there, half in and half out of the place I had given the best years of my life to, a strange feeling washed over me. Not rage, not grief, just displacement. like I was a ghost haunting a life that no longer existed. I waited for the elevator anyway. The receptionist didn't greet me. She barely looked up. Someone else had taken my name off the board outside the 27th floor meeting room. The digital display now read Strategic Integration, VPM, Ford. By the time I reached my old floor, the silence felt surgical. Every familiar face seemed to avoid eye contact. The junior analysts who used to greet me with eager updates stared into screens. One even stood up and quietly walked toward the break room the moment I stepped out of the elevator. No welcome, no questions. No curiosity, my desk was already stripped bare. The plants I'd kept alive through jet lag and budget cuts were gone. The framed client thank you letter from Eurolink had vanished. Even my chair had been replaced with a newer one, the tag still hanging from the back. I stood there for a moment, staring at the vacant surface where my entire professional identity had once lived. My nameplate had been removed. Not moved, removed. On a table nearby, I spotted a copy of the internal newsletter. The headline read, Maxwell Ford to lead Nexus partnership in global expansion push. I picked it up and scanned the article. Following Adrian Blake's transition out of the company, VP Maxwell Ford will assume full control of the Nexus client integration strategy. Transition, a sanitized word for what had happened. No acknowledgement of the man who had built the deal, flown across 3 continents to negotiate it, or personally salvaged 2 of the 3 contracts from collapse. I dropped the newsletter into the trash. Then I left. Back on the street, the city felt louder than before. The honks sharper, the air colder. People bustled past, and none of them knew or cared that I had just been erased. I walked a few blocks to the old hotel I used to use between international flights. They knew me there. No one asked questions. They gave me a room on the 15th floor overlooking the river. I closed the curtains, took off my shoes, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel it. The hollow space. Not grief, not defeat, but the realization that the place I had poured myself into had never truly seen me. They had used my brain, my voice, my presence. And now, with the stroke of a keycard and a press release, I had been deleted like a line in an outdated spreadsheet. But I wasn't broken. I was free. I pulled out my laptop, not the one they shut down. The other one. The black mat machine that still held the future I had started designing in secrecy. I opened the secure client portal Jenna and Raheem had helped build. The encryption was flawless. Clean, ready, I clicked open the contact list. Rodriguez Martinez, Khalil Rashid, Linda Schmidt. And then, without hesitation, I sent 3 emails. Each one had only 4 words, the door is open. The morning after I sent the 3 emails, I sat in silence with a black coffee, a croissant I had no appetite for, and my laptop open beside me. The room was quiet. No celebration, no champagne, no inbox overload. Just stillness. But not the stillness of nothingness. The stillness before the shift. Like the sky before a storm. I knew what would be happening back at NextCore. Harrison would have walked into the Monday morning executive meeting already on edge. Maybe his assistant would have handed him a printed update about the Nexus accounts. Except this time, there would be no forward momentum. No eager messages from the clients. No check-in notes from my side. Because I was no longer on their side, and neither, it seemed, were the clients. According to Jenna, who still had friends embedded in legal, Harrison placed the first call to Khalil Rashid at 9:15 a.m. No answer. He tried again 20 minutes later. Nothing. By 10 a.m., he looped in Maxwell and the interim strategy team. They attempted Eurolink next. Linda Schmidt had always been responsive, direct, efficient. The kind of person who replies to emails within the hour and doesn't tolerate delay. That morning, the line rang 7 times before going to voicemail. At 10:40 a.m., a follow-up email was sent to her office address, a second to her legal team. Both bounced back. Out of office. Please direct all Nexus-related inquiries to your current point of contact. Except they didn't know who that was anymore. By 11:30 a.m., the panic had set in. They called Brazilink. Rodriguez Martinez's assistant answered and said he was unavailable. Unavailable today? Harrison asked. No, she replied calmly. Unavailable for NextCore. He didn't know what to say. He demanded an explanation, but none came. Instead, the line went dead. Back in my hotel suite, I refreshed the client dashboard quietly. Apex's new portal, built with Raheem's design, tracked every client interaction in encrypted logs. It wasn't just smart. It was invisible. No public launch, no flashy announcement. Just clean, secure, human-first onboarding. All 3 clients had signed into the system within the hour after my message. Each of them had scheduled exploratory sessions with the Apex team. Nothing dramatic, just quiet steps toward transition. It was all happening without noise, without confrontation, no lawsuits, no threats. Just silence, the kind that speaks volumes. The kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know about who still holds the conversation and who has lost it entirely. NextCore wasn't being attacked. It was being ignored. And for a company like that, silence wasn't absence. It was a verdict. Around 1 p.m., Harrison tried one last move. He had someone from investor relations reach out to all 3 client firms publicly, framing it as a consolidation update and requesting joint press statements to confirm NextCore's continued leadership on the Nexus project. Only one of them replied. It was a short message. No greeting, no signature block. NextCore no longer speaks for us. You do. I stared at the words on my screen for a long time. They were simple, unpolished, but they held more weight than any title NextCore had ever given me. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window. The city pulsed beneath me, unaware of the quiet unraveling taking place 28 floors above, where I used to sit. The place that fired me without a voice was now losing deals in a language they no longer understood. Not loud, not public. Just gone. Jenna called that evening. They're scrambling, she said. Maxwell's panicking. Harrison thinks you're behind it all, but no one can prove anything. The clients won't return any of their calls. They don't need to, I replied. Are you sure you don't want to, I don't know, make a statement? Go public? I looked at the glowing monitor, at the new Apex homepage Rahim had just published. It didn't say my name anywhere. No founder section, no about me. Just the logo, a line of code in the footer, and a promise. What we build belongs to those who build it. No, I said softly. Let them sit in the silence a while longer. Because this wasn't revenge. This was clarity delivered without noise, and it was only just beginning. At 9:30 a.m., the press release went live. No flashing banners, no launch event, no breathless LinkedIn threads. Just a simple, elegant announcement published directly through Apex's media relations portal, distributed quietly, purposefully, and irreversibly. Apex Solutions is proud to announce a multi-continent strategic partnership with Teknova, Eurolink, and Brazillink. The agreement, valued at $2.3 billion over 7 years, will deliver secure, modular cloud integration across 3 regions, redefining global enterprise connectivity. For media inquiries, please contact Press Apex. Signed, Adrian Blake, CEO. That was it. No mention of NextCore. No fanfare. Just precision and presence. The emails started trickling in by 10 a.m., not from my former colleagues. From journalists, analysts, VC scouts. People who had never heard the name Apex before this morning. People who now wanted to know how a company with no website until last week had just pulled off the most seamless acquisition of 3 legacy clients in a single stroke. By 10:45 a.m., the first trade article went live. Then 2 more, then 6. By 11:15 a.m., TechWatch Global posted a headline that made me lean back in my chair, take a slow sip of tea, and smile. The silent takeover. Who is Apex Solutions, and why is everyone at NextCore panicking? Back inside NextCore's glass tower, silence turned to chaos. Maxwell had locked himself in the conference room with 3 of the junior communications managers, his voice rising just barely through the soundproof walls. Jenna had sent me a text from legal. They're trying to write a counterstatement. Harrison wants to blame external sabotage. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say, nothing to argue. Harrison hadn't been sabotaged. He had simply been outmaneuvered. The thing about building power quietly is that no one sees it coming until it's already done. They don't know where it started or how far it spread. They just know, suddenly, they're not in control anymore. That was the difference between noise and clarity. NextCore had noise. I had clarity. By 12:20 p.m., Financial Chronicle called the move the boldest silent shift in enterprise tech since Altivix's pivot of 2011. By 1:15 p.m., Apex's inbox had over 70 partnership requests and investor meeting invitations, none of which we accepted. Not yet. Not until the foundation was fully sealed. Meanwhile, the clients, Khalil, Linda, Rodriguez, stayed utterly silent. Not one press quote, not one explanatory tweet. They had no reason to explain. They had simply chosen differently. And they had chosen me. Rahim walked into the hotel suite around 2 p.m. with a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne and a printed copy of the press release like we were old-school startup founders. You going to frame this? He asked, grinning. I might tattoo it instead, I replied. He handed me a manila folder. Also, financials. They're already transferring implementation budgets to the new accounts. Jenna triple-checked everything. No hang-ups. I nodded and exhaled. Not with relief. With recognition. This wasn't luck. This was designed. Every move had been deliberate, every conversation planted, every client nurtured. I hadn't taken NextCore's clients. I had earned their trust while NextCore was too busy promoting power plays and empty titles. Later that evening, I got a short voicemail from a number I recognized but hadn't saved. Harrison. I played it once, then deleted it before it finished. He didn't yell. He didn't plead. He just asked the same question they all ask when they finally realize what they've lost. Was this personal? Of course it was. It was also professional. It was strategic. It was overdue. I stood by the window that night, overlooking the city. The skyline no longer felt cold. It felt earned. They had taken everything with noise. I had taken everything back in silence. No announcement, no vengeance speech. Just a name on a page, Adrian Blake, CEO. And the world watching. Not because I demanded it, but because the results spoke louder than anything I could have said. The conference room at the Global Tech Summit in Stockholm was lined with deep blue velvet curtains and polished glass tables. Luxury masking desperation. At 9:00 a.m., Harrison Ford stood at the front of room C214, flanked by his newest interim strategy lead and two compliance managers in stiff suits. The buzz outside was loud. NextCore had leaked news of a breakthrough partnership with a rising Nordic cloud firm, hoping to signal recovery after the Apex collapse had rocked investor confidence. Only insiders knew the truth. This was not a breakthrough. It was a lifeline. And it was already unraveling. I watched from the back corner as they began setting up the projection screen. My entrance wasn't announced. I didn't need it to be. I had timed it for precision, not spectacle. Harrison paced as he spoke softly with the prospective partner's CEO, a broad-shouldered man named Bjorn Eriksson. I had met him once before, in Oslo, over a long dinner where we shared ideas on sovereign cloud hosting. He didn't remember me yet, but he would. At 9:15 a.m. I stepped forward. Calm, collected, wearing a slate gray suit, a simple tie beneath, and confidence stitched into every step. Bjorn looked up and blinked. Adrian? Harrison turned. The color left his face so fast I thought he might faint. I walked to the table and extended a hand toward Bjorn. It's good to see you again. Bjorn took it with a firm grip, confused but intrigued. You're here with... I represent Apex Solutions, I said, and I'm the other party in this negotiation. Silence rippled through the room like a dropped glass. Harrison's jaw tensed. This is a closed session, Adrian. No, I said evenly. This is a joint session. Apex was invited after your firm submitted two conflicting statements about global rollout capabilities. The summit organizers requested transparency. Full partner alignment. Bjorn nodded slowly, the pieces connecting in real time. I opened my folder and laid out Apex's infrastructure map. Clean, updated, tailored to Nordic Tech's regional expansion plan. Our model was leaner, faster, tested. His CTO had already signed off on the specs privately, pending this final review. I understand your position, Bjorn said to Harrison, but we can't afford another misalignment after what happened with Nexus. Harrison cut in. That was sabotage. I didn't flinch. That was foresight. I offered them a choice. They chose clarity over politics. Harrison turned to Bjorn. You really want to work with someone who abandons his company mid-deal? I smiled. Sharp, quiet, composed. I don't abandon ships, I said. I rebuild them without the ones who drilled the holes. There was a beat of silence. Then Bjorn looked at his legal team. We'll proceed with dual review, he said. And I want Adrian's proposal considered as primary. Harrison stepped back like he'd been hit. I could have ended it there. I could have taken the win quietly and left him to rot in the tension of the room. But I didn't come just for the win. I came for the dignity they took from me. So I looked Harrison in the eye, steady and cold, and said, one condition. Everyone froze. I'll proceed with the joint infrastructure only if you're not involved. I don't deal with people who fire their architects mid-flight. The silence in the room turned heavy. Bjorn hesitated for just a breath, then nodded. I respect that. Harrison's face collapsed into itself. For a moment I saw not a CEO but a man realizing the game was no longer his to play. He left the room without a word. Outside Stockholm, streets buzzed with late spring sun and tourists crowding cafe tables. I walked toward a nearby courtyard where Raheem and Jenna were waiting, both holding coffees, both watching the live feed from the summit on their phones. Heard you dropped a bomb, Jenna smirked. No bombs, I said, sitting beside them. Just balance restored. Raheem raised his cup. To the architect. I didn't raise mine. I wasn't finished yet. But for the first time in years, I felt like my name didn't need defending, because I had walked into the room they tried to shut me out of and made it mine. At 7:45 a.m., I walked into the Apex Solutions headquarters as the morning sun poured through the tall windows, casting long lines of light across the clean, polished floors. The space was quiet, but it wasn't cold. It hummed with a kind of calm energy, the kind that only comes from a place built with purpose. On the far wall, a new plaque had just been mounted, etched in brushed steel. It read, Apex Solutions, founded by Adrian Blake. Not tucked in footnotes, not hidden behind team credits, not erased or replaced, just there, full final visible. I stood in front of it for a long moment, fingers lightly brushing the surface, remembering all the times my name had been written in drafts and then removed before the meeting. All the proposals where I did the work but someone else presented the slide. All the press releases I edited that never once mentioned my contributions. They had taken so many pieces of my voice for so long, but they never really silenced me. And now I didn't need to raise my voice because the building spoke for me. Back upstairs, I stepped into the boardroom. Not the sterile, chrome-heavy kind Nexcore used to favor, but one with warm wood, soft lighting, and walls that invited conversation, not domination. Linda Schmidt from Eurolink sat on one side of the table reviewing an integration timeline with Raheem. Rodriguez Martinez was on a video call in the corner, laughing about the latest soccer match between Real Madrid and Barcelona, gesturing wildly as he explained a controversial penalty call to someone off-screen. Khalil Rashid had sent a gift that morning, 3 bonsai trees to place around the office, one for each continent Apex now supported, along with a note that read, for patient growth and lasting roots. I sat at the head of the table, but it didn't feel like a throne. It felt like balance. That afternoon, I received a quiet notification on my phone. Maxwell Ford had resigned from his position, effective immediately. No formal statement, no interviews. Just a single line in the industry trades. Sources say the company is undergoing a shift in leadership structure following the collapse of several major partnerships. No one asked where he went. No one really cared. An hour later, another notification came through. Harrison Ford, removed from the Nexcore board by unanimous vote. There was no scandal, no lawsuit, no meltdown on camera, just removal. A slow, quiet unraveling that mirrored exactly how they had tried to erase me.